Hello, I'm Citrus, and you're looking at the Metal Build MBF P02 Gundam Astray Red Frame. This came out pretty recently in March of 2016, and on the back there isn't a price tag, but you can take my word for it that the retail price for just this is 18,000 yen. And here's a size comparison to a Gundam marker. For those of you not familiar with the Red Frame, it's a relatively small statured mobile suit, so even though this is 1/100 scale, so basically a master grade size, there are like larger high grades that will probably tower over this. For those not familiar with the Metal Build line, it's basically the Gundam's equivalent of Chogokin, and it's the spiritual successor of the Metal Composite sub-line of the Gundam Fixed Figuration series. The big difference here is that the designs no longer stick to just the different mobile suits that Hajime Katoki has worked on. And so far, all of the entries have all been from alternate universes. The initial entries of the line included suits from Gundam 00 and Gundam SEED, and as you know, the Gundam Astray is from Gundam SEED Astray. There was some controversy towards the beginning of the line about how much metal is actually in the figure, but I can tell you that in this one, there is actually quite a lot of it. So the feet blocks are basically completely metal. Any of the parts on the legs where you can sort of see that metallic color that's not quite as dull as the painted on metallics is all metal. So there's a lot of metal down here in the thigh. The crotch is basically all metal. The major joints inside of the chest are metal. The elbows here and the shoulders. So this figure, when you pick it up, has a really good amount of heft to it, and it feels really premium. Now, the one thing that the Metal Build line doesn't have as much of compared to the Metal Composites is that there aren't quite as many details. So you do see some stripes on the knees and some logos on the shoulders and stuff, but you're not going to see any of the little like warning labels and stuff like that that tend to be all over the Katoki designs. You'll have like a little bit on the hips there, but that's basically it. And the figures are also tend to be a lot more articulated, and that, along with the lack of decals, really invites you to sort of get your hands on it and play with it, which is something I'm a pretty big fan of. So with that out of the way, let's get into the articulation. So while we're going over the motion of the joints, you can also get a really good look at all the details that are here. A lot of nice little tampoed markings. So starting with the head, you have a ball joint at the top and a swivel down in the base. Looks really far down and pretty far back as well. You have a shoulder that can swivel forwards and backwards, go up and down, and you can see a really cool little bit of mechanism here where this piece follows the travel of the shoulder up and down. You got your arms coming out like this, swivel here. So a lot of the joints on here are quite tight, and that's really good because it means that your figure is going to be able to hold a lot of poses. But just keep in mind that because you have different materials at different ends of the joints, to be careful and not to just sort of freehand it, support the joint as you move it so you don't damage anything. Good bend here, and a little bit of a bend, just that much, at the lower end towards the wrist. This is to facilitate a lot of these sword holding poses, and this actually does it very well, and I'll show you in a minute. And then you have a little sideways action there, and a swivel on just a peg. There's no ball joint on these, which I'm super happy about, because swapping the hands is super simple, and you're not going to have to be super scared of breaking anything. Now the waist has a little bit of rotation. It's quite tight. It starts getting really tight when you get about this much, and I don't really want to force anything just in case anything does break, but it's really solid. And inside of the waist itself, you have a little bit of side-to-side action and a good bit of back and forth, if I can get my hands around this in a way that you can see it. Let's see. Like so. And you can see that there's these red things that follow along the bend, which looks really good. The backpack is on it, and you can also see that the support in the back follows as well. Moving down to the hips. Get that out of the way a little bit. And you'll see one minor issue. The leg can't come out too far, and it's because the center of the joint, the hip joint, is actually sort of off to the side. And this gives the figure a really good wide-looking stance, but it does limit the outwards articulation a bit. You get some rotation here, and inwards, which I really like. And for movements forwards and back, you can move about that much back before it starts getting really tight, and this much forwards. Actually pretty high if you can get the skirt all the way. And the knee, not quite a 180, more like a 135 or so. This little piece in the back kind of gets in the way. And if you're familiar with the Master Grade, you'll see that there's actually one piece of armor separation that's missing from this one, which is right here, because on the Master Grade this would separate as well. So it has a little bit of a gap down here, but it does let you see this red piston, which is actually really long, but it does go all the way inside the leg. And the top piece, as you can see here, also slides up and down. And down to the ankle, pretty simple affair. So you just have a series of metal linkages that lets the foot bend all the way back like this, forwards, and affords a really good range of tilt for some really nice ground poses. Moving on to the accessories, this comes with 4 pairs of hands, 1 pair open, 3 pairs for holding accessories, and this one single one that's also open. So these are really, really expressive, and I really like them a lot. But you'll notice that they aren't painted here all the way through to the knuckle. So if you do want that little bit of detail, you have to go in and do it yourself. But I can understand that on like sort of mass production sort of scale, getting that little tiny bit of paint in is probably asking perhaps a little much. So the hands themselves are actually white plastic, as you can see on the inside, and the red is painted over. So they're really glossy, but the white is matte, which is really, really nice. And this one is actually for holding the sword, kind of like so this hand would be gripping the sheath, and the thumb would be flicking the sword out of the sheath. And I'll show you that in a second when I show you that accessory. The first of the open hands are just your regular holding stuff hands for the beam sabers and stuff like that. You can stick the sword in here as well. The second ones are for gripping the beam rifle, and these are also gripping hands, but as you can see, the angle is a lot steeper. So it's for those poses where you want to have the sword or beam saber held in like a pointing straight forwards pose. So it's very, very good that Bandai decided to include these. If I remember correctly, the Metal Build Exia also came with hands like these, so they can simulate like the motion of throwing the beam sabers forwards, as it tended to do in the series. And moving on to the accessories they're meant to hold. Here's the beam rifle, a little bit of nice tempo here. Not too much other detail, but it does look really sharp with all its details. There's a little peg that flips out here for you to plug this into the arm. Handle here swivels, and there's a nice piece of clear plastic in there. It's really dark, so you can't really see exactly what color it is, but the detail is all there. Looks really good. Here's the shield, which is basically your typical strike shield. More or less, you have the Low Guile logo there, Junk Guild, and then you have the MBF Astray orb actually etched into the plastic. On the back, you see lots of nice mechanical detail again. The handle here flips out. This has multiple joints in it to be able to plug into any number of positions on the figure. Slides back and forth. And this is a really nice gimmick. Pop that open, it slides up. So I was never even aware that, you know, the shield was supposed to be able to do this in canon, but I think this is the first version of this I've ever seen that can actually do that. I don't even think the Perfect Rate does that, actually. So, very cool touch. And then we have these two beam saber effects. Camera's having a hard time focusing on them, but you can see that there's a silver fade towards the bottom. Looks really good when they're equipped. And I'll show you that in a bit too. Otherwise, nothing too special. And then here is the big party trick of this particular figure. So here is the Build Astray katana. And as I remove it here, very sharp point here. Got to be careful with that. And you can see they sort of did the effect where to make it look like it's actually folded steel. Now this plate is of course plastic, but there's plenty of third-party swords that you can get that are actually metal. Some of them are very, very dangerous, so got to be careful with those as well. And when you get to receive this in the box, it's actually in pieces. So you have the hilt piece that's separate, and this, and you'll see that it's etched in there with the name of the blade. So this is exactly like it is done on the Master Grade, more or less, but the amount of detail on the entire piece is, in my opinion, much better. Alright, and you'll see that the sheath itself has the name of the sword, a nice stamp on it. It looks very good. And it has the sword grip to hang on the mobile suit, and it can technically go on both sides. Just pop it off like so, and you can flip it upside down and equip it that way as well. All of the box art shows it hanging the other way, so with the end curving up, not curving down, but you know, it's a preference and you can have it go either way. The last accessory, and in my opinion the biggest improvement that the Metal Build line has improved over the metal composite, is the stand. So you'll see here that there's the name of the mobile suit and a nice big Junk Guild logo. And then we have the arm here, which, let's see how I can best show you the functions here. So it's basically a action-based one, but a lot heftier because it has to support more weight. So you have a slide here, and the lock up here will let it stay into any number of positions, so that when the weight is applying on the top, it doesn't give, like so. And then on the back here, you flip open this one, and there's a slide, full extension, and none. And then at the top, there's a sort of switch-assisted ratchet joint. So you push this in, and it lets it move backwards and forwards, but it'll lock into certain positions along the curve. And that'll make sure that the figure, when it's on top of it, will basically never droop. To put the figure on top of the stand, you have these two adapters. So this one goes in through the back, like so, and this one also goes in through the back. It just depends on which one you like to use. This one they recommend using this one for the flight pack because it centers the weight better, but using this one you hide the stand arm a little better. So it just depends on what you're displaying your figure with. Both of them work really well. Here's the sword drawing pose I was mentioning earlier. And you can see that the right hand is the normal open hand, but the left hand has the gripping hand with these thumbs sticking out. As you can see, resting right at the guard, right here. Pushing it out of the sheath. And it looks really quite good. This is one of those poses that I think only this figure can pull off, because the hands included in any of the version of the model kits just simply can't do something this expressive. And here's a pose showing off the beam sabers, as well as the articulation in the arms, which, as you can see, is more than flexible enough to reach the beam saber in the backpack. The extra swiveling joint in the sword's holster really allows you to control where the sword goes, so it really adds a lot to your poses. To finish things off, here's a pose with the more traditional strike accessories. I think the first question that anyone asks when they think about whether or not they want to buy this figure is it worth paying 4 times the price of the Master Grade for basically what is arguably the same thing? And for me, the answer is an obvious yes. I'm a huge sucker for metal. I'm a huge sucker for really high quality, high end action figures, so this is right up my alley. But there are a couple of other points to consider. So the first thing is that the metal build line, when they make a figure, they usually reinterpret some of the facets of the design. So for example, on this one, the thighs are considerably bulked out, and you see some liberties taken with the colors that would usually be just flat white. And a couple of the lines just in general where you would expect them to be straight or curvy are just not. So you have to like the metal build interpretation of the design first and foremost. If you don't like it, then at the end of the day, when you have this on your shelf, even if it has great articulation and all that good stuff, you're just not going to enjoy looking at it, and that's not good, right? On the other hand, if you dig the design, then by all means, this is definitely one to pick up. The fact that this also is basically a Chigoken, the fact that it contains metal, is, for some people, a selling point alone. So that's also something to consider. There's also the fact that the plethora of alternate hands gives you a lot of different subtle expressiveness that the Master Grade and other model kits of the Astray just simply can't do. The perfect grade hands are dynamic enough that they can probably come pretty close, but the pre-molded hands are just incredible. Now, if they didn't come with those hands, then I honestly don't think this would be worth nearly as much attention, but it's the fact that you can do so many impressive poses with this. It's like really emotive, expressive displays that makes this really worth picking up. And not to mention, if you don't want to pay an arm and a leg for the Master Grade that has the standard backpack and the rifle and the shield, this is basically the most easily attainable version of that you can have in 1/100 scale right now. You can go. There are like third-party knockoffs that I'm aware of, but the quality of those things is always a gamble. So, insofar as accessories, the Master Grade does offer tactical arms, which the current metal build does not have at all. But it was really teased in an event, Atomic Nations event last year, so we could very well see it come out sometime later in the year, and that's something I'm very looking forward to. And that aside, this is really a complete package. The 1800 yen price point for a metal build now gets you so much more than what a metal composite used to get you back in the day. And the fact that you have more accessories and more ways to display it, especially this extremely functional and durable stand, is just a huge plus. So if you like the looks, if you like metal, and if you like premium, this is definitely one for you. If those aren't two big selling points for you, then this is probably something you can pass on. But do keep in mind that the prices of these figures tend to skyrocket after the initial batch is gone. So unless Bandai announces a re-release, like they did with the Destiny recently, expect those prices to stay pretty high. So that's all for this review. I do have the flight pack that will be in another video. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Mr. Roboto.